Well, I'm Bill Hancock, and I don't think any of you have been around long enough to remember me. I was the chamber director of this chamber 20 years ago. In fact, I was the one that converted it from the Bethany chamber to the Northwest chamber. But so it's always good to come back and talk. But Don and I are going to talk about what the situation is, what other companies are doing, and what the Oklahoma Office of Workforce Development and our local affiliate, our agency, which is the Central Oklahoma Workforce Investment Board. And in fact, I have a flyer of theirs, and they are the people that you typically just contact, and all the contact info is on that flyer if you need help from us. I also have a flyer that's a resource page with some targeted resources, and then I do a monthly report that goes to the governor's office, the legislators, and various businesses that ask for it, and all of our partner agencies on what the situation is. I'll hand that out at the end because it's long and it would be the whole time to read it, you know. But first I wanted to start off though is as employers compete for workers to fill positions in every sector of the economy, they need to consider that many people are not willing to go back to the office setting. So that's hindrance number one, so to speak. They've rebuilt their lives around COVID. Now it's been 15 months? Yeah,
March.
15 months, and have things in place that they're not easily going to walk away from. It can be a change in work-life balance as an example. They may not want to work the same number of hours or the same willing to work in the evening when their kids are home. A large percentage of women left the workforce to care for children and their schooling. Bringing them back is going to require more flexibility to get them back to your place of employment. Others who have left or lost jobs use the time to further their education. And I know somebody here is going to talk somewhat about that. But you know, they are looking at, okay, do I want to do what I was doing? Do I want to change? They've had the last 15 months to think about that. And a lot of them are making those changes. And of course that means if you're offering a entry-level position, they may not want that anymore. And this is a quote from Chad Warmington, the president of the state chamber. Employees are very picky right now, and they can be. They've got lots of options. Mentioning the child care was an issue before the pandemic. We lost many of the child care operations last year, so the problem is much worse than it was before. And that can be, you could be creative and think a way to get around that issue. And that issue can affect a male or a female, although tends to affect a mom more than a dad. Nearly 7.3 million adults say they are not working because they're caring for their children. And of course, obviously that's nationally. And that's from the most recent census survey. Women in particular are expected to return to the labor force very slowly. They are the most affected by child care issues, by taking care of a sick parent, and by getting training to change careers. Many have also, back to the work life, many have also changed their view. They're spending more time with their family and they don't want to go back to not spending that time with the family. One last thing is that there are people that are retiring early. They were in a forced retirement. Let's say they were 62 and they were in a forced retirement They liked it. They're not going to go back to work. They're 63 and a half now. They don't want to go back to work. So that's another badge. Then the last point in the opening that I want you to think about is, before I turn it over to Don, is think of 2020 as a year or 5 years of economic changes and how our economy operates happened in 1 year. Really, look at a lot of the changes, like a trend of more shopping online. Well, that was happening before. We just condensed 5 years of that change down into 1 year. And a lot of other changes, same thing. So that's one way to think of the disruption. You want to take a chance?
Sure. Yep. Take a shot. Hi everyone, thank you for having us here. You definitely know where to have a meeting. So congratulations on that one. Bill and I probably would have been here for lunch anyways, because that's kind of what we do. So I'm glad that we're here. I'm Don Morris, Executive Director of Workforce Development for Oklahoma. I'm a recovering human resources leader, about 27, 28 years leading HR. And my good friend Sean Copeland talked to me about this role, so I've been here about 18 months and trying to make a difference. It's always fun to start a new job and inherit a pandemic. And so we've had a lot of enjoyable times, some fun, some not, but we're definitely now on a path of recovery. And I've got some pretty good numbers to share with you as well about that. And to Bill's point, some people might be staying home because they enjoyed time with their family. Some people might be coming back to work because they spent so much time with their family. So my work both ways. Make that point. You have to meet some of my family members for that to make more sense. So just some numbers. I like to be able to give an update wherever I get a chance to. The Oklahoma civilian labor force, we've essentially held steady at about 1.86 million. You might remember that our most recent census was 3.9, so close to 4. So about 1.8 million people in the workforce, and right now about 1.77 of those are working. And so certainly not the case a year ago. And so we continue to see Oklahoma's unemployment rate leave the sweet spot and get to the difficult to find people spot, which is where we kind of, in fact, before the pandemic, the numbers that were going to come out for March for Oklahoma were less than 3% unemployment, so 2.9, which is unbelievable. But that's a pain point when you're looking for people to work. So leisure and hospitality, they're the fastest recovering. They're down about 2,000 workers per month. Back in November, they were down about 8,000 workers per month. And so as we all try to go back to restaurants and hotels, you can see that everyone's got the same idea. And so those are bouncing back well. We were 4.8% unemployment back in November. And so we're recovering just rapidly there. The nation is still at 5.8, according to the June 4th jobs report that came out. And so we're doing much better than most of the country in terms of unemployment. Labor participation rate, it's something that we look at. It's kind of an odd number. It's measuring everyone in the state who's 16 or over and not institutionalized. And so the very best state in the nation at this percentage is Washington, D.C., arguably if it's a state, but they're about 71% labor participation rate. And so in Oklahoma, we're currently 33rd% at 60.8. There's a lot of factors to that number. If we get some time to maybe circle back about what drives that number and makes it difficult to make it come up, but we were in 49th a year ago. And so we've recovered and found more people coming into the workplace, which it doesn't seem like it with the pain points business leaders feel right now. I understand that. So per capita income, we mentioned, Bill made a good point about people wanting to come back and earn more money, or getting the idea that, hey, I can do something different. And we've had a lot of programs, as has Career Tech, through this whole time virtually to help people make that move. The Governor's Council set a goal from the beginning that we can help people come out of this better than they were before, because it gives you kind of a stopping point, and not having a job gives you that courage to say, you know what, I'm gonna aim a little bit higher. And our programs are here to help with that as well. But per capita income is 48,300 in Oklahoma, and to be top 10, we'd have to drive that number to 63,000. So So you can imagine the average wage in Oklahoma is low. And so as we look at these programs to help people build wealth, I think that was a term that Governor Keating first introduced in all the state documents of how can we help people build wealth, which is something I think everyone's interested in. We're 30th in the nation in higher ed degrees per 100,000 people, which that number's definitely been lower as well. To get to top 10, we need to confer about 320 more higher ed degrees per 100,000 people to get to the top. But that's not as far-reaching goal as most of us would have thought. So a lot of these numbers that I'm sharing, you can get at gov-dashboard.ok.gov. And so this was not really public for a long time, but it is where the governor is tracking the top 10 goals, trying to be top 10 at everything. And so you can see that it's updated monthly at that webpage. I wanted to mention a little bit about the Governor's Council. We don't talk a lot about the Governor's Council I'm about to really get upstaged by barbecue, of course. The Governor's Council for Workforce and Economic Development is a group of about 35 people around the stage. This group is led by business. And so by law, under the grant that we have, 51% of the people on the council have to be business leaders. And so their job is to oversee WIOA programs, which is the majority of what we do. Title I, we distribute about $90 million every 3 years to local areas, and we monitor those dollars. The Governor's Council oversees all those processes, and we are a way to get information to the governor. And so I don't think we point that out a lot, but information coming to the council that they could then, go ahead, man. I should have grabbed a chip. Information, you can get information to Bill and I or anyone in our department. We can get it to the council, and it can, if it's passes or is legit or whatever, it can go to the governor as an advisement point. So I think a lot of people don't realize the power of the Governor's Council, and so I just wanted to kind of point that out as well.
If you wouldn't mind taking a quick break.
Yeah, let's see.
Sorry. So that we don't want you to be interrupted, and we'll just, that's fine. You're going to get those out, and that way we're not distracted while you're speaking.
You bet. I've been told to shut up before. So. Not that nice. Not that nice.
You'll come back.
I do want to return and talk about some ideas for getting people back to work.
We want that.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and keep on eating. You don't have to stop. But we'll get back into our subject matter a little bit.
We're going to come back together now. Thank you for that brief intermission.
The next thing I wanted to cover, or that we're covering, is what some other businesses are doing. Because the reality, of course, is you trying to hire somebody, you're competing with somebody down the road for that same person. So you've got to pay attention, just like you do in the other side when you're selling something. You got to pay attention to your competition to see what they're doing. And there are really what I would call three different categories. One is benefits, one is pay, one is bonuses. Bonuses are quick, cheap, easy, may or may not, depending on the situation, have a great effect. The city of Tulsa, for instance, is offering a $150 incentive for if you're a lifeguard, because they're struggling in getting lifeguards for their swimming pools. And of course, the nice thing about it is, that's from looking at it from their side, is it's just 150 and it's done. It's not a permanent increase. Chipotle is offering its employees a bonus of 200 to 750 for them to prefer somebody that comes to work for Chipotle. That's a resource that a lot of people forget about, is that your own employees may know somebody that can come work for them. Walmart, and normally you don't think of them as paying a lot, but Walmart has made one big change, is that they're moving a bunch of positions from part-time to full-time, which is giving those employees then benefits, which is the point. They're improving their pay package by adding benefits to a bunch more categories of employees. There's some small businesses locally that are offering their new employees a bonus if they stay 6 months. And, and that's the length of time maybe to get, beyond a startup time. They've trained, you and they both know whether this is gonna fit. So if they're still there at 6 months, they're getting a bonus. Another type of benefit would be like what the Cherokee Nation is doing. They've added 2 more hours of leave, and they're adding outdoor spaces to their offices, which is an environmental thing. And it can be as simple as, and I'm just pointing to because all this is a restaurant, but put a picnic table with an umbrella outside your back door for people to take a break on. That's just a simple, inexpensive benefit to those employees. 2 hours of additional leave is not that expensive either. Then we get into the real hardcore part, the hourly wage or the pay scale. This is what your competitors are doing. Chipotle has raised its average wage for workers to $15 an hour, with a starting minimum of $11 an hour. And that's a big jump because obviously restaurants tend not to pay the most. McDonald's has raised its minimum wage at corporate stores, and we have no McDonald's corporate stores that I know of in Oklahoma City. The only one I can think of possibly is the one on I-44. But they've raised their minimum wage at the corporate stores to $12 immediately and $15 next year. Fowler Holdings, which is very local, Fowler Holdings, which has car dealerships in the metro area, has raised its minimum wage to $12 and will be at $15 next year. Bank of America is raising its minimum wage to $25 over the next 4 years, which is a little higher target. They're also requiring their vendors to pay a minimum of $15, which is an interesting tactic. But their vendors, of course, would be, the people that stripe their parking lot, their building maintenance people, their cleaning people, even their advertising agencies, all the different things that they buy from, they're requiring them to be at 15. Under Armour, which we have an Under Armour store just south of here at the mall, they've raised their minimum wage from $10 to $15. Big jump. And then, of course, our own very large local employer, very, very large local employer, Hobby Lobby. Actually, early on, I think they raised it before the COVID even started. They're at $17 an hour, whether you're working at their store, Hobby Lobby and Mardell's, or Hemispheres, or working in their warehouse or in their offices. And of course, they offer a second benefit, which matters in the retail industry, is you don't have to work on Sunday. You want to take a good, now Don gets to talk about what we're doing.
Well, it's definitely a time if a business doesn't purchase a market pay study every year, and sometimes you don't, like we certainly had to in healthcare every 6 months. This is definitely the year to partner with one of the companies that do market studies. We all get in trouble when we call each other and go, hey, if you'll quit paying them $17, I'll quit paying them. That's against the law. the oldest HR law on the books, right? Sherman Antitrust Act. But market studies are, and I have no ownership in any of them, but I'm just saying you can really find value to really see what actual wages are doing. And OESC also partners on some of that labor market information. I wanted to talk for just a second about the person who you're trying to get to come back to work. So it's one thing to recruit people. It's one thing, if anyone watched the Today Show this morning, had a whole thing about people saying, I'm not coming back, I'm going to stay working from home. And so I wanted to just talk about a few points about that as you're having that discussion with an employee that does not want to come back, or maybe some of us are having that same struggle within. So here's some points as well. There's a lot of studies, I won't rattle them off, that show that increased job responsibility is linked to pay and solidarity. And so while you're off work, you're missing a chance to grow. At the same time, if no one else will come back and you will, you might be that next promotion because of your willingness. And so if you look down the road at things like tenure, you could, depending on how your benefit plans are set up, you could actually have to reset your PTO accrual rate for having a break in service. You might even reset like a 401k match for being out of work. So it's a lot bigger than just the short game. But the biggest thing to tell that person right now is that these things are drying up rapidly, right? So the government incentives that are out there, we already stopped the extra 300. At the same time, Oklahoma's paying $1,200 to the first 20,000 people that return from unemployment and work for at least 6 weeks. And so there's like an actual cash incentive to come back to work. But the most thing to talk to a person about is that it's not just the cash that you're receiving. A job is, and our HR people in the room can attest, we regularly will budget 29 to 31% of your salary just in benefits that you're missing out on if you're just staying home. And so that's a discussion to have with them. Also, it's a good time to focus on retention. The easiest person to find is the one that did not leave, right? So keeping a person, and you may replace them, you may not ever get the value that you had in a person who leaves. And those decisions are made on more than money. And when you hear somebody say, well, they're going down the street for an extra quarter an hour, there's a lot more behind that than 25 cents an hour, right? It's what are the working conditions? How is my manager motivated about my own personal career? Can I grow here? How am I treated? Is it an inclusive workplace? I mean, some of those questions, this is a good time to ask what it feels like to work for you. And step back and do that. There's a lot of surveys and you spend a lot of money doing that, but in all honesty, it's a time to emotionally rehire the people that you have. And what I mean by that is to sit down with people one-on-one, talk about their career. What's your next step? And when they say, well, I want to work somewhere else, I want to go become an engineer, support that, right? We got them while we have them. But when you support people, you'll be amazed how loyal they become back to you. Just some HR stuff to throw in there. And also childcare. If you look at the cost of childcare, if you have 2 children, you're going to have to make a pretty good wage just to break even on childcare. And so you might consider an incentive around childcare to subsidize that in some way, and or being flexible with people as they kind of return back to work. It's really hard on the kiddos, right, when they've been home with mom and dad for a year. So, but the biggest connection that we can make from the state office is apprenticeship programs. We work very well with the Career Tech on these as well. Right now we have an incentive, $10,000 incentive to any company in Oklahoma that starts a new apprenticeship program. It might sound difficult to start an apprenticeship program, but we have professional people that come to your place, sit down with you and give you all the advice and all the documents and forms that you need. We also subsidize the first 6 months of pay for a registered apprentice. And so this is a great time if you're looking for people, not just warm bodies, but somebody that you can work with for a apprenticeship program. They get to try you out, you get to try them out. It's a really good way to get a solid employee, and we're throwing a lot of incentives. We expect to see a lot more of this nationally because it's just the biggest connection for people in work. And so contact our office. We have people just ready to do those kind of registered apprenticeship programs. And I know Career Tech has some as well. And so there's a lot of opportunities, but the word is apprenticeship to help us all solve this thing and to help people understand, wow, I can be this. You know, so many people in Oklahoma. I'm from the worst part of the state in terms of labor participation. I'm from McAllister, and so down in the woods, there are a lot of people. We've got about a 49% labor participation rate. So it's very similar to living in West Virginia, for example. No one's telling us in high school that we can't be things, and so these apprenticeship programs are a way for people to find out, hey, maybe I could be an engineer, maybe I could be an HVAC person or whatever. So that's my encouragement. I could go on about apprenticeships.
And did you give me to contact your office? Is it CoLib that we're contacting you?
Work with your local, good point. Yeah, work with CoLib. And that's my encouragement overall. We've got some information for you.
We'll have a handout from CoLib, among others. One thing too to remember or think about, everybody thinks of apprenticeship as bricklayer or plumber or electrician. That's a very small group of apprenticeships. Apprenticeships can be like there is basically a bookkeeper for an accountant. There's an apprenticeship program. There's apprenticeship programs in healthcare. Anything you can think of practically. How many thousand apprenticeship?
Yeah, it's some kind of massive number.
I don't remember now. Several thousand different federal apprenticeships. And the benefit to the employee, of course, is that they've got a certificate saying, I am this, I'm skilled at this level.
It's a resume builder for new people just entering the workplace as well. One of our biggest participants in federal programs is Dell Computers. And it's fun to talk to them about whether they're going to come back to work, because they used to work a week on and a week off before. You drive by that on 15th and the highway, there's nobody there. They're still dealing with that, but they're still doing apprenticeship programs. And they wouldn't stop. You couldn't make them stop once they started this, because they're getting quality people. And they're also helping people. And so the last point that I'll make is our programs, we help people find jobs, but we play the long game. Like OESC now is doing career fairs, and their job is to get unemployed people to work today. We're close partners with them, but we train people to upskill and reskill. And so that's where we come in. We also provide supportive services to help people. We buy steel-toed shoes and nursing shoes, and we help with rent and childcare and whatever one of our participants qualifies for and needs. We remove every barrier there is to getting to work. And so that's the key partnership that we have with business in the state. So I can ramble on and I'll stop.
Well, I've got 3 handouts here, and I'll bring them around to you, and they list a lot of there are a lot of unique things that we offer. Work opportunity tax credit, which is good for people for hiring a person with a disability, our food stamp participant, our justice involved in an individual. You get different kinds of tax credits for each of those kinds of things. Veterans, think how many veterans we've got. All things that you can get help in paying for those people.
Thank you. Can you do your round of applause? We are going to run a little long today, so for those of you who have other obligations, feel free as we continue to slip out. I think what we're hearing is there's a lot of resources and a lot of money available to help as we're looking to hire. I'm not sure how many people an apprenticeship program works for. I know Kenneth, that kind of jumped out, something that you kind of looked at before as well. But that's fantastic. We'll come back at the end if you're able to stick around to ask some questions, but I want to make sure we get to Molly Scalf with Francis Tuttle to talk about some additional resources we have. So let's give her up for Molly.
Yep, absolutely.
And don't feel rushed. Take your time and just
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, having said that, I think we'll only be about 45 more minutes. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. This is going to be very very quick, and I will, I'll kind of do a condensed version. I know everybody's time is really valuable. This has been excellent information, gentlemen. Thank you. And I have about 10 notes of things that I need to connect with you guys on. So, former HR person as well. So, HR people in the room and you, just all this HR and recruiting talk is just, I love it. But I know right now it's a really, really challenging time. So, I'm going to be brief as far as some things from a Francis Tuttle standpoint, a little more locally. And before I forget, I'm in great company today. We have a Francis Tuttle board member in the room. We have a career tech board member in the room. So it couldn't get more cohesive than that. So thank you for allowing Francis Tuttle just a couple minutes. Specifically to Francis Tuttle, so I'm Molly Scalf, Workforce and Economic Development is our department. We were formerly Business and Industry Services. The last year, as you guys have all done, we've taken a real look at how we can better serve customers. And a couple ways we've done that are kind of reinvent some things that we feel like we can help with. One of those is an economic development push. We've hired an economic developer. Amy Shones, fantastic. I get to office right next to her, so everything we do now has been very collaborative. That's been great. So a little bit of information on a white flyer that I'm gonna leave up here if you wanna grab one on your way out. Just a little more traditional things our department as a whole can help with are on this, in this black flyer. Just a little bit of information if you'd like that, specific to recruiting and students. Something I'm really excited about, I asked Kenneth if I could pick on him a little bit. He graciously said yes. But employers like all of you, Kenneth, that have been able to hire maybe a Francis Tuttle student that's worked, and also looking at the other technology centers in the metro. Most of you, anybody in the room that's worked, that's had success recruiting students from multiple tech centers in the metro. Okay, I'm getting a couple of nods, and that's wonderful. We've taken this year, Cody Mosley, who's my director for my department, and Kirsten Lindsay, who's actually on the board for the chamber, have done an exceptional job, in my opinion, not just because they're my bosses, you guys, but really taking a look this year with the other tech centers of how we can be more collaborative and serve employers, whether it be corporate training or specific. Some fun things I've been able to work on this year are some student recruiting things. One of those, we didn't have a platform at Francis Tuttle. So it was up to our fantastic instructors to know, Kenneth and I were just talking about one, Clint Drebeck, for example, one of our automotive instructors, to know about all of his students in the room and what needs they have and what they're looking for. You know, those students are looking for career opportunities, but they also may just want a job at a barbecue place as a part-time role. So for all of those needs, internships, apprenticeships, we have a platform, it's called Employee FT, and I would love to work with you on connecting you to that if you want to post roles there. So that's another flyer if you want to grab something. So just wanted to quickly kind of go over what we're offering there. A couple of things to really think about too. We've done, I think, heard some exceptional things this morning about how to get creative with those employees, how to retain the ones we have. Also, just since I'm specifically talking Francis Tuttle and the other tech centers in the metro, thinking of partnering with the classrooms directly. People like myself at the schools can help make that connection. There are some ways you can serve on an advisory committee to perhaps connect anybody in the room. I think Kenneth is, but other than Kenneth, on an advisory committee at Francis Tuttle. Okay. That might be an exceptional way to get in front of the students, talk about the great things you have to offer. All the things we've heard today are, we've got that huge spectrum of why people are looking and what they're looking for and what they're looking to do. Same with our students, quite frankly. Some of them are reskilling. Some of them are, for once, they have kids out of the house, so they're going back. Lots of different reasons. Some are just want a complete career change. Others have come right out of high school. So just a million different reasons. And that gives you an opportunity and your organization an opportunity to get in front of the classrooms. We also hear from those, every program at Career Tech has an advisory committee, industry professionals that advise them. It also gives you a chance to collaborate with other people like you. Obviously you come to events like this, but that just gives you another venue to do that. So those are just some things very briefly. I know we're short on time. That I had lots of notes here. So what I would like to do, I'm going to keep it brief, but I have a card that's here if you'd like to visit further about ways to connect with Francis Tuttle. And I cannot stress enough, we've heard apprenticeships, internships, those are just phenomenal ways to connect with students and others looking to work. Questions? Yes, sir.
Could you speak a little bit to some of the different industries and stuff that will transform that might be available?
Yes. So traditionally, many of them, everything, we have automotive, we have all the career training programs you've thought of, even, way back when we were the old Votech, moving forward, but looking to industry aerospace, we have specific to Francis Tuttle, we have a new composites program. We noticed that sheet metal, we had an aviation sheet metal, which serves to a degree aerospace, but drones and other new things that people are working on maybe don't have a lot of sheet metal. So what's a way we can serve aero and other industries specifically? We were very fortunate and hired an instructor from Tinker to Francis Tuttle, and he's going to help us with that composites program. So just one quick example of, we try to be very forward thinking, look and see where things are shaping here from very knowledgeable individuals like this at the state level, and partner with many groups at the state to try to look and see where we're going to be in Oklahoma in 5 and 10 years, and how we can jump on that, while at the same time helping Kenneth and small businesses to hopefully, fingers crossed, we were just talking about a specific student that it may or may not work out. Kenneth's being very gracious with that and trying to help us make that work, but while still looking at some of the very traditional things like that, and helping industries like Kenneth's move forward too. So.
And what about training resources? Obviously, there are a lot of resources to find employees. Do you have any resources if employers need to train existing staff to partner with?
Yes, absolutely. So I would recommend the black brochure for that, in terms of corporate training, consulting, coaching, everything from leadership to safety to something maybe that we don't have developed, that we just developed for somebody's organization. So that I would kind of consider a traditional training area that we've always worked in, but again, trying to help companies, not just, they may have already identified immediate needs and we're happy to help with that, but also talk with them about where, where are we at in 3 years with your business, 4 years, 5 years, and what does that look like, and how might we help with that as well? So great questions, thank you.
There's a bunch of them that we work together
Yes.
on.
Yes.
An example is, which you referred to, and it's on the first flyer I handed out, incumbent worker training. Incumbent worker training is where we pay through a program to upskill somebody. Say, take a person that works at a body shop working on metal and needs to learn about how to work on composites to keep their job, basically. Well, we'll pay for it and they'll do it. So there are a variety of things like that we work together on.
It reminds me of another partnership I forgot to write down. Career Tech and the Oklahoma Office of Workforce Development, we signed an MOU a couple weeks ago with Express Personnel. And so if an employer doesn't want to employ the apprentice, Express will employ them. And so that's really a way to eliminate some of the liability. And so people are, there's a cost, like any placement agency is going to have, but if sometimes a person's 16 and you usually don't hire people under 18, this is a way for them to carry the work comp. And they come in and they do inspectors shop for safety, which is always a good thing to have when it's not somebody that can get you in trouble, right? So they can they inspect the workplace, they will hire the folks. We have no limit to this, and so as much as people want to do that, it's another way to alleviate risk, and it's a partnership.
And speaking of HR, then they'll help you work through some of those situations if you don't have that full HR team. So I love that. Yep, that's excellent. What else? What questions? Do we have time for a super quick question for you guys? Because I wonder if a few in the room, do you get the question apprenticeship versus internship? Ever? Anybody in the room battle that?
Yes.
I get that a lot from employers. I'm trying to think of kind of a daily talk with 5 to 10 employers, calling, wanting students from Francis Tuttle, quite frankly, and I get that all the time. So I would love, I've dug and done research and tried to articulate it best I can, but that's a tough one. Is there a better answer I could be giving employers for that?
The biggest difference is an apprentice is somebody that you intend to hire.
And keep permanently.
And keep.
Yeah.
An intern is somebody that the old days where they all work for free and everyone had them. Yeah, you kind of can't do that anymore. You kind of never could, but now they're suing. So, kicked it up a notch. So, but yeah, so an internship is a work-based learning experience for somebody to come. There's a value definitely to the employer. They're going to be there for usually a 6-month time frame.
Or summer.
And an apprentice is 6 months to 2 years. And it's somebody that you're literally grooming for a position.
And specific to the grant program though, that is for apprenticeships, not
Yes.
internships.
Right,
Okay.
right.
I've had that question too. Thank you. Yeah, that a lot. What else?
On those apprenticeships, are there industries or classifications of businesses that are ineligible to have them, or?
It has to be a legal business.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggie. That's about the biggest
For
thing.
instance, get a nonprofit organization.
It is by job classification, not by who they're working for.
And so there's thousands of those NAICS code jobs, and if one of those people works in a nonprofit, it's the same difference.
Okay.
And you hire an accountant, it's no different than anybody else hiring an accounting person.
It's wonderful to have the resources too to go and help them work through that, because many employers haven't tried. They're still trying to figure out, well, we've had interns, how does that compare? So talking through that with them, having resources at the state level to go and help work through that would have been huge when I was in that HR chair.
Yep. I honestly wish I had known.
Yes,
I
me
had
too.
8,000 employees in Tulsa with Hillcrest Health, and I had no idea what workforce offered. I would have really, for example, another great partnership, we're working with Variety Care, and at Metro Tech, we established a program just for Variety Care. And so COWIB is qualifying participants, and we're forecasting, I actually played golf with their CFO last week, and they're forecasting 80 CNAs coming out of that
Nice.
program this year.
Nice.
I mean, to hire 80 CNAs in a healthcare program, it's almost impossible. But they're building that pipeline intentionally, and that's the kind of stuff Career Tech does and the kind of stuff we do. And it's actually the Governor's Council's mission is to connect education and workforce, and that's exactly a good example of that. So if your business has an interest in that, it's what we live for. We do.
It's amazing how those things can start just so tiny. I've seen over my time at Francis Tuttle just coming to an advisory committee meeting, and then it turns into this and this and this. It just grows, and I know that's tough because you're trying to run your business or you're at your office and you have so many things to do. But I've seen those things just really snowball and they get the state involved, and it's a win-win for everyone.
And on the human side, to see people's lives change. If you go out to YouTube and just put apprenticeships, we've got about 5 folks that were kind enough to tell their story and see how their lives have changed from, in one case, prison, years in prison, to now. I was told in this person by the employer out in Claremore that he's the best welder they've ever had. And so he went from homeless situation in jail for 6 years. The guy's tattooed up to here, and you'll see that on the video. But now he's making 70 grand as their top welder, and he found his wife there, and so together they're making 120 grand living in Claremore and not incarcerated. And so on the people side, that really does drive us as well.
Melrose campus.
Yes, we have a Justice Involved program as well at our Melrose campus with Francis Tuttle. Many of the other tech centers in the metro do as well. And I've seen just in the last year, with talking about what we're talking about, companies getting creative, some companies that hadn't reached out to us for that program in the past are now. So yes, thank you, Kathy. That's great.
Remember that we had the biggest, what's it called, release? Commutation of prisoners in the country a year ago.
And we tend to do that every November. Last
So-
November was weird. But.
So there are opportunities there. That is a huge batch. And a lot of them are people that were incarcerated because they did something that's now legal.
Great point. Great point.
There's, I had a district attorney tell me, before the law, there was like 30 places to buy marijuana in their, or now that the law's passed, there's like 30 places to buy marijuana in their town, but there used to be 40. So that's kind of a story there.
Are you aware if those individuals that receive that commutation, if they were given those resources and placed with, let's say, career techs, or is that all being tracked to be able to see the successes?
Yeah, Remerge is probably on the women's side. Most of those commutated were females. Remerge works with them, and then we're doing a pay-for-performance option with a company called CEO that does the same thing. And so we're trying to transition those people directly into programs that can help them
And you'll
stay
be
out.
proud of Oklahoma. That's something we are one of the best at doing. CEO is in 7 states, and we're one of them. They are trying to get into Texas. They can't get a buy-in down in Texas to do it. But CEO helps them by teaching them how to live in a workplace and giving them a job while they're learning so that they're not short of money.
And it's really two, I talked about labor participation rate. There's really 3 big barriers that make it hard to find people in Oklahoma. One is we incarcerate 600 more people per 100,000 than any other state, which means any other nation, which puts us top in the world.
Right.
So that's a problem. The second one is health. We are, you were talking about being top 10. We're top 10 in all 10 major morbidities. If you're dying from it, you're dying from it in Oklahoma, or you're taking care of someone else. And so obviously a lot bigger thing. The third one is kind of surprising, our low cost of living. If you take the top 10 states in labor participation, I mentioned DC. It's going to be a little expensive to live in DC, right? In Oklahoma, a veteran, for example, you can retire here on a low cost of living. And so a lot of people aren't working. That's why they came here. I know my wife and I enjoyed her staying home with both of our kids because you can't do that in San Diego.
Right.
You're not going to do it in Maine, right? But in Oklahoma, you can. So it's a good thing, but it does affect us that it's not that, and we also have a low average wage that we pay. So it's not that valuable for people to come to work, and that's the rub. Those 3 are the big reasons that our labor force is not fully participating, and they're all tough issues.
I know that having such a limited having no labor force growth is a real detriment as we're trying to recruit economic development into the city. Many different companies that start out looking at us, we quickly get ruled out because we don't have enough bodies, and particularly skilled bodies and whatever they're needing, to go to work for them. And so that's a real struggle that Oklahoma is having right now. Another issue we've been talking about over the last several months is minimum wage, and with the federal efforts to raise minimum wage and such. And this whole time is an opportunity for a natural market correction. A lot of us that have been paying wages that are lower are in order to get the employees we need, are going to have to choose to raise our wages rather than be forced to do so by the government. But that's a better situation than being forced by the government to do things. So thank you for sharing the information that you've had today, and that's all things that tie together.
We give one more show of appreciation. We will able to stay around a few more minutes.
Sure.
So if you still have questions, feel free to come up and ask. Make sure and get some of these